What is it all about? Well, I took Steffi on a tour around Soho, Howard, Center Street, and we looked at stores like Glossier. Beth, I think, was one of the first investors in it. They sell more merchandise per square feet than Apple. Am I still? Can you still hear me? Hello? Hello? I can also. Oh. I can also scream, and all kinds of companies like Everlane, Allbirds, I think Reformation, Parachute. So all these new companies that now, like, they started online, started new, opened physical retail stores, and I thought it was really interesting that there's so much happening. And I showed it to Steffi, and then she asked us to do a panel. So. But so you're the moderator. So.
Yeah. So I'm supposed to be asking the questions. So I thought we'd start with a little bit about both of your companies, and they're both pretty new. So Burrow's been around for about 2 years, Craft Jam for a little over a year. Both have been thinking about consumer behavior for a long time. What was it about the market that you're going in? What was the consumer behaviors that you saw that sort of prompted creating the business? And I'd start with you. And by the way, we're sitting on Burrow sofas, so if
yeah, thank you. So for me, it started off as a personal journey, trying to buy a sofa as someone who'd bought, either used sofas or sofas from IKEA before. Moving on to that next stage of life where I wanted something a little bit nicer. And personally, I found it very difficult to find something that was delivered within a short time frame, of high value, high quality, but still affordable. I mean, going from a lifestyle where I didn't really care about furniture to like making a home, and bridging that gap was extremely difficult. And luckily at that time I was in university doing my MBA, and we had about 1,600 people who were in a very similar situation where they were ready to move on to the next stage of life, but there was no real alternative. All their lives they'd been used to fast and free shipping thanks to Amazon, and then when you go buy furniture shopping, it's just completely opposite. You're thrown into this new experience which is so antiquated. In the fact that you have to wait 12 weeks, you have to arrange for delivery, you have to wait for buy insurance to get furniture up your elevator, only to find out it may not fit and then return it. So, you've been brought up all your life thinking about buying and retail in a certain way, and furniture is just so outdated that it really just shocks you.
So I go online. I haven't heard of Burrow. The sofas are about what, $1,000?
Yeah.
How do you get that consumer? And they probably haven't seen it in a friend's home. How do you get that how do you get those first customers? How do you build that trust?
Yeah, so for us, the most important thing has been to sort of resonate with our customers. And by that, I mean build an authentic brand where customers resonate with the same values that our brand has. So you may have 1,000 different choices for sofas out there, but why buy Burrow? And it's not only because it's a higher quality sofa, a higher product sofa, but it's because the values of the company stand for or are similar to what your values are. And I think in the retail market right now with so much optionality, the only way to cut through the noise is to sort of speak to the customer on one-on-one basis. And the way to do that is to speak to their values as opposed to their feature set.
So Nora, there's few people who have as much experience in the craft space as you do, and you've worked with many different types of communities within that. When you started Craft Jam, what were the things that you wanted to tap into? What were you seeing when you started it?
Yeah, I think we've seen 4 major consumer trends really that informed this building of the company, and one is really the shift towards an experience economy that has been going on for a while. And the consumer now wants to have experiences. There's research, 75% of millennials rather spend money on an experience than on an object they desire. And you see that with all the festivals, Coachella and concerts. Another trend is that people seeking community, people are lonely. You're connected 24/7 online, but the face-to-face contact, people miss that, and so they want to come together in person. And another third trend is that actually people want to make things with their hands again. And what I've seen in the past 15, 20 years within craft industry and generally is that there really is a shift from, you could say, conspicuous consumption to conspicuous production, meaning people make things to show. They buy an experience to show that they've made made something. And so the current retail landscape doesn't cater to that, right? So if you want to have an experience, if you want to come together, if you want to do something creative, where would you go? Would you go to a Michael's, which is basically a warehouse? Who teaches you if you haven't learned in school, if you haven't learned from your parents? And online, you really don't get that kind of experience that you get together. So this is what Craft Jam is about. We do workshops, we teach you how to do calligraphy, hand lettering, knitting, all these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. So if you read any paper, you hear about all of the retail closings, Toys R Us, Sears, over and over again. Is retail dead? And if it's not dead, what does it look like?
For Burrow, I think retail is a very important part. And this goes to your earlier question, like how do you convince customers to buy something, right? Like this is still a pretty large purchase, $1,000 purchase. And even if someone is very in line with our brand and our vision, they may still want to touch it and feel it. So going back to her point, experience is still very important. But with dollar per square foot being such a huge metric for companies, you can't really afford to warehouse and store sofas in a retail space. So how we see retail is an outlet for our brand to give customers an experience, and it may not just be showcasing the product, but like thinking about a giant foam pit. And that sounds random, but it sort of goes back to the brand where we want to have fun. We want buying furniture to be fun and not a painful experience. So it's still very important to showcase the product and build the experiences that people want.
Mm-hmm. And so is the foam pit in your new store coming up in a few months?
You'll find out in September.
Yeah. I think there's basically three things that are important for retail to survive or to strive. And the one is definitely to have an experience that's engaging. The second is to give guidance, maybe to educate. And the third one is to have something that you can customize. And so I just read about this department store opening in Montreal, Essence. What they do is you come there by appointment, high fashion, and you can choose from 20,000 pieces, but they're actually not in the store. But they are personal stylists, kind of like Stitch Fix, but you get that experience in the store. There's art installations in the store, fashion capsule collections. And so it's actually a fun experience to go, and you're still buying.
And sort of building on that, what we've seen in our research is, even with our sofas or any products that can be customized, when you give the people the ability to design it or save their designs, that increases conversion drastically. It's because they feel like they've created something. So it's about how you position it to the customer as well. Like people, for example, like car configurators are pretty popular, even though people don't buy such a large purchase. But the fact that people are designing makes it very engaging, and sort of it's almost as big as a brand tool as it is as a sales tool.
Yeah, I think the idea of co-creation is really important. And right now, I mean, you can kind of order anything in no time, right? Like you want that specific Bedouin bracelet from I don't know where, you can find it online and you can order it. And so for us, it's like we see that within crafting really has a monopoly on uniqueness. And that's what makes it so special. At the same time, you really get time off your screen. You have some kind of meditative moment there. You make something, you finish something, you have a sense of accomplishment. And so there's a consumer that's overwhelmed with information, constant Twitter, Facebook, email, never ending. And so we give them a space where they can just relax and take their mind off a stressful day.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting to go back to sort of the retail space. And so we've talked about physical space, non-physical space. You're opening a permanent store versus a pop-up store. You see many companies testing new products and doing it that way. It'd be interesting to hear how you guys made that decision, permanent versus pop-up. And then for you, Nora, as you think about, you utilize space, but you actually have a spaceless company. So you're not creating a physical space for people to come. And is that something that you're thinking about down the road, or is that sort of the magic of the model?
I think for us, the decision to go with a semi-permanent store rather than just a short-term pop-up is to run as many tests as we want. So you talk about A/B tests on websites, but we've learned through sort of our ecosystem that the best way to get conversion in store is through A/B tests in a physical retail space. So any of the build-outs that we're doing are all temporary, and we'll be changing our space out every 3 to 6 months to see what resonates. And for an example, you may want to focus it on a very sales-focused experience where it's easier to check out, buy, and sort of push product. The second way to go is make it a very brand-focused environment and think about selling as the secondary thing. And so those are two thoughts we're having. And to be able to run those tests for long enough, going with the permanent space is where we see it makes most sense.
Yeah, so we don't have a physical space where we host our workshops, or at least we don't own a physical space. We partner with retailers all over the city, stores, hotels. Some of them, Arlo hotels, boutique hotels, they put on monthly events that we organize. There's fashion stores, real estate companies, and so a lot of the retailers, they need to have some kind of engagement with their customer, and they want more foot traffic. And how they can do that, they can have events, but it's a lot of work to put on events. And so we have a plug and play model where we just find out what's the space like, what can we do there, and then we decide, this kind of craft, calligraphy, leather wallets, knitting, whatever. And then they market to their community because they want their people to come. We market to our community, and people buy tickets, and then we have that event at that space all over the city. So if you're on the Upper West Side, maybe you go to the Sill, go to Brooklyn, Empire Stores. Yeah,
just a few spots where you can find you. So lots of talk about millennials being very different than the generations before them, and Gen Z, very different than millennials. What are you saying? How does that play into the decisions that you're making on product, positioning, marketing?
I think we have a very specific set of customers that we're looking for. It's the people that have never really thought about their home, similar to me when I was buying a sofa, and are ready to make a permanent investment into buying something that'll fit in with their needs. So I guess we don't look at it from a millennial versus Gen X or Gen Z perspective, but whoever is coming of age in that certain age group. However, we are seeing currently, obviously, millennials being our biggest customers, Gen X are close second, and that's sort of been enabled because of places like Airbnb, where people now have rental homes that they need to furnish quick and fast, and they don't want to spend thousands of dollars, but still want something nice enough. And so there's this nice secondary market that you're also looking at, and it's been enabled through other e-commerce businesses.
Yeah, so the majority of our customers are millennials as well, but there's also a lot of Gen X that are coming and hearing about it. Our look and feel, social media, what we do is probably more for a millennial, but it's, it's something where it really depends on the kind of project that you do. It's kind of age neutral, I would say, what we do. So, we do bat mitzvahs as well. We do lots of company events, corporate events, and really depending on who hears about us. Like, for example, the New York Times wrote about us, and we saw people coming that were a bit older. Like, Thrillist sends people that are younger. So it also depends, like, who picks us up and talks about us.
Got it. So we talked earlier, or we touched upon trust and values. And is this a moving trend? So it's never been easier to start a consumer business. It's really hard to execute and be successful at doing that. But what's the opportunity there for when you think about these two pieces? So trust is obviously really important from the standpoint of converting a customer on your site, but also this piece of value-based business.
Yeah, and I'll speak on the value piece first. So, interestingly enough, we had sold our sofas for a different price, about $950, and we were discounting less. We were giving people $50 off just for tracking purposes. We later changed the price to $1,095 to see what that would do in terms of volume and margin. We expected our volumes to drop. Interestingly enough, our volumes spiked up, and so did our margin, because we gave them $100 off as opposed to 50. But in their minds, the perceived value of the good that they were getting was so much higher that they started comparing us to brands like West Ham and Crate and Barrel versus brands like IKEA or something else. And so, we say consumer behavior is changing, but some of the basics, I would say, are still there. And on the second piece, trust. I think there's so much noise out there with brands and especially with paid media, social media, that it's really important to think about word of mouth marketing to build a sustainable business. And one company that's done that really well is Glossier. But the way we are looking to achieve that is to work with micro-influencers and also get third-party reviews that are more authentic to people. And why micro-influencers? Because getting a celebrity endorsement still looks inauthentic. So a micro-influencer who you're already listening to, or in fact even podcasts that you already trust and listen to, are great ways of sort of building that organic following.
Got it.
Yeah, for us, trust and the right values is important. Transparency. I think a lot of people they care about where things come from and how things are made. And you've seen it in the organic food movement where, people used to eat just anything coming out of the can, microwave food, and now it's all about farmers markets and maybe growing even your own food and just knowing what's the supply chain. And it's also something that started in fashion. And once you understand where things come from, you're also interested how are they actually made. Like, people started cooking like crazy a few years ago, right? Or maybe 10 years ago. And so I think it's similar with making, where people are now care actually how things are made, and then they want to learn how themselves. And being mindful about it, not being wasteful. Recycling, fixing things is important for people. Don't just throw it away. A few big companies have picked that up. I think Patagonia, they fix anything you've ever bought there. And so there's a consumer that actually wants to feel empowered, and they want to be able to do things themselves. So third-party reviews, word of mouth is so essential. So we monitor our reviews very seriously. We don't do any paid advertising, so everything is about people recommending us. And in experience, you talk about it, you Instagram it, you share it, and so we just have to make sure that we are true to who we are. And so my entire team, all of us, we're lifelong crafters. We could make anything that we offer in the classes. I could teach probably 80% of the classes as well. So there's a lot about authenticity as well.
I love this concept, and this is probably the last question that we have time for, is this concept of that type of value, or the give back. So Warby Parker gives a pair for every pair that's purchased, or those kinds of things. How important is that to the consumer today?
We've played around with that concept for a little bit. I think for us, what we've seen is it's more important where things are coming from and that they're fair and sustainable. We're still sort of figuring out what the right situation for us is, because I think there's a fine line between doing it for just to follow trends in the industry versus actually being authentic about it.
But you have transparency around, here's how the products are made, here's how these are woven, that kind of thing.
And that's extremely important. A large part of our market is young parents, young mothers, and the first question is, hey, is this going to cause cancer? Because for the longest time in the furniture industry, that was a real big concern. So the wood's sustainable, everything's made in the U.S., the wood, the foam, and also assembled here. So we want to be as transparent as we can so people build that trust.
Great.
Yeah, so we actually seen our customers asking for charity events and doing social good through crafting. So we had several customers asking us to put on events that give back, and so we've been doing that. Collecting, taking part of the tickets proceeds and donating that.
Great. Yeah. Well, that's definitely top of mind. Well, thank you both for this great conversation.
Thank you.
Take care.